Hello and welcome to the Helios blog. My name is Helios here for another reaction video. Today, Jordan Peterson talks about men who make the worst partners. Let's get into it.
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
The person that you can completely map and who only does positive things for you, it's like A, you don't know that person. B, they're not communicating with you, nor you with them. Maybe they're just subordinating themselves to you or you to them. And you're not growing. You want someone who can, a real relationship is a wrestling match. It's a grappling phenomena that you both emerge transformed from. And that's what people want.
Yeah, right. So the best relationships are those that are contentious, where you're constantly arguing with your partner. Yeah, who doesn't want that? Yeah, Jordan's telling on himself. Men want peace, so no, I don't want to be in a contentious relationship. Sorry, speak for yourself.
They don't want a pushover, not unless there's something wrong with them. You know, a narcissistic person who never wants to be challenged will want a partner who does nothing but deliver exactly what they're told to deliver, but they will mistreat them beyond belief. What does the optimal relationship look like in terms of positive and negative emotion? You might say, well, utopia, nothing but positive interactions. It's like, no. Imagine you get people to code the interactions they have with their partner during the day. You know, you sample it. You say, was that interaction positive or negative? And then what you're trying to do is predict the longevity of the relationship. Okay, so here's the data. If it falls under 5 positive interactions to 1 negative interaction, the relationship doesn't continue. Fair enough, too much negative. That's easy to understand. If it exceeds 11 positive to 1 negative, the relationship doesn't last. Why? No challenge.
Nothing is being discussed or talked about, I guess.
Right? What do you want from your partner? Bliss? No. No, you don't. Well, that's a representation of Diana. You could think of Diana, there's an opposite, Durga, in Hinduism, and she comes forth if you make the proper sacrifices to Kali. But I wanted to show you alternative representations from different cultures of these archetypal forms. This is Diana, positive feminine, multi-breasted, right? She's the thing that nourishes the world, and so that would be, on one hand, your mother, who obviously protects you from the terrible aspects of fire and danger, but also nature conceptualized as the positive feminine in general. The source of all fertility and all food and all beings and all good things. Something that you want to have on your side, that's for sure. And you might say, if you acted heroically, properly, and you played the metagame and not the game, and you made the proper sacrifices, then you'd never encounter Kali, you'd only encounter her benevolent counterpart. And so then you might say, well, does she even exist then? And that's something that's very interesting, is because the degree to which the terrible part of the world manifests itself in your life is proportionate to how insufficient you are.
Right, exactly. The worse you do, the worse you get, effectively. The worse you treat yourself, the worse you get. I'm inclined to believe that. And the worse you treat your environment, the worse you get. That's right. And the people around you. It's true. Alright. Shitting time. Let's hit the like, hit the sub, hit all the notifications. Buy my books at bit.ly/heliosbooks. Go to my Patreon and subscribe. Patreon.com/theheliosblog. Shout outs to Curry Kid, the most recent to buy a strategist guide to seduction. Share this video. And if you're on the podcast and you want to support me, I've actually put a supporter link for Buzzsprout. Just click the link for the description, and it's in the description box under support the channel. All right, let's continue.
And we don't know the full extent of that. If you got your act together completely, maybe all the suffering would disappear from your life. Or at least maybe all the unbearable suffering.
Right.
And maybe all the suffering or the unbearable suffering from the lives of people around you too. And you already know that because there are people that you'll go to in a crisis that you can rely on, and you know they'll help you. And you wonder what the world would be like if you were like that and everyone else was like that too. We'd have a lot fewer crises. And the ones that we do have would be a lot more manageable.
Indeed.
And so when people say, well, why is the world so rife with suffering, one answer to that is because we're not yet what we could be. And it
Yeah. One of the reasons is because most people are not actualized. They're either on the journey, or they don't even care to be on the journey and they're just wasting their time. Or they're fully self-absorbed. They only care about themselves, and so they hurt those around them by extension.
At least that's an answer that we have some control over, right? You're not going to talk God out of making the world suffer, that's for sure. And you're not going to negotiate directly with Mother Nature. But
Indeed.
You might be able to put yourself together a little bit and see if that works. At least it's under your control. And God only knows what the upper limit of that might be. Well, here's the decomposition of the fundamental archetype. The dragon of chaos differentiates, on the one hand, into the feminine, that's the unknown, and the feminine differentiates further into the negative feminine and the positive feminine. The negative feminine is the reason for witch hunts. It's the reason for, you know, there's a whole group online called Men Going Their Own Way, MGTOW.
Indeed.
That's a very interesting group to go study. There's lots of them. I don't know how many of them there are, and most of them are older. Many of them are men who've been through a particularly horrifying divorce for one reason or another, and they've had enough of women. So they tell the young men that they're teaching, never have a permanent relationship. Never share your territory with a woman. Never share your possessions. Make sure you never live together, and don't stay with one long enough to enter a common law relationship, because you will be stripped of everything that you have. Well, that's a hell of a thing to be telling people. But what's happened is that the female has been manifested in their life only as the negative archetype, and they've got that confused with all women. And that's partly, you know, you got to ask.
Yeah, well, the problem is this. A lot of these men don't actually understand female nature, and they don't understand that women want a superior, right? So, sadly, women's love is not unconditional. The only woman whose love is unconditional is your mother, and even her love is conditional. And so what that means is, in order to get love and respect and good treatment from women, you have to provide a lot of value. And in order to provide a lot of value, you have to be strong. You have to be competitive, successful. You have to be the kind of man that other men want to be and other women want to be with. And if you're not, then breakup will inevitably happen. And so, that's that. So these men, yes, their women went feral, but almost certainly, the woman is a reflection of the man that she's with. So if the man was strong and knew female nature and had his crap together before he was with the girl and so on, which so few men do, then perhaps they could have prevented the inevitable. So they put the cart before the horse. They got together with the girl before they were ready to actually have a girl. And so they got tortured because of it.
Ask yourself, if you know the mythological stories, maybe if you made the right sacrifices, you wouldn't have so much trouble with women.
Indeed.
I can make dinner. I can take care of my family. I can undertake this job at work. That makes me a decent father. That's part of being a good being a good person. The question is, what's at the pinnacle of that? At the upper end of the abstraction hierarchy, because these things should be organized all the way up into a complete hierarchy. What does it mean to be a good person?
Well, first, as I said, you need to be strong, physically fit, with making 6 figures, charismatic, with a good end count, so you understand female nature, good in bed, and so on. You need to have these things. With the power to have other women if you need, with the power of dread, with the power of hanging other options over her head, so that she knows that she can't misbehave, right? All of these things. And then in addition to that, you are entirely self-sufficient. Without a girl, you could provide everything, right? You can provide your own food. You can provide for your own shelter. You have your own car. You're able to buy your own food. You're able to cook your own food. You're able to clean your own place. You can do everything yourself. You don't need any help at all. You're a man, strong, independent, and actually doesn't need a woman. That's the kind of man that in a relationship suffers very little. But think about the amount of effort it takes to become that man. Most men never make it there. And that's why so many men suffer. In addition to all of the temptations of modern society. Women being uneducated, women being unwise and wasting their youth and sleeping around and destroying themselves by becoming alpha widows. Women believing in this consumerist bullshit culture. Women getting too old and believing that their strong independent career will make them happy. Women pricing themselves out of the market by earning too much and thinking that they're better than most men. Average women thinking that being with an average man is settling, and so on. All of these things, in addition to men having their own shortcomings, all of that has led to this. Also, womanism, teaching women that career is more important than everything. Career will always be more important than everything. Career should be more important than everything. These fundamental lies, all of this, all combined, all together, is the reason. Oh, and of course, no-fault divorce, birth control pill, child support, common law marriage, all of this stuff is also the reason. All of it, all together. All right, let's continue.
Well, it means, we've walked through it, it means you win the set of games. You go out into the world and explore, and you bring back what you've found, and you build yourself out of it, and you share it with other people. That's an old story. That's no different than the story of the collective hunt. It's exactly the same thing, right? You build yourself into someone that can have a long-term relationship with someone of the opposite sex, generally speaking, so that you can bring children into the world and turn them into exploratory heroes and stabilize the state. That's what should be at the top, and that thing that's at the top, it's the same thing. It's the integration of all of those things into the same thing, and that's the same as the sun, that's the same as the halo, it's the same as the thing that emerges from the belly of the whale. It's all of those things, and you also know that because you know that you have the capacity for admiration. It's in you, it's locked into your biology, and it's locked into your sociology. You see what you admire, and that's a partial representation of the ultimate ideal. It's as simple as that. So I kind of nested this, so I should just explain this diagram briefly. So it was a map I tried to make in some sense of my own identity. I mean, just using myself as an example of someone typically situated in society. So, I have this role, which is kind of a high resolution role. I'm a father and a husband, and I also run a business, and so the father and husband thing is sort of nested inside of that because it's dependent on my economic success to some degree.
Yep.
And then that's nested inside a capitalist structure. And then that's nested inside, well, I said American personality, but it's sort of, that's good enough. And then that's nested inside the humanistic Western personality and inside the Judeo-Christian personality, and that's all nested inside this thing that's best conceptualized as something approximating the exploratory hero. And so that's a value structure that's, and you can differentiate that to a much higher level than father and husband, and we did that when we decomposed things right down to, their motor actions. And you want what you want, and this is, I think, there's something that's transcendent about this. You want all those things stacked up so they're all operating properly at the same time, all the way up and all the way down. And I don't even know how far down means. Like, if you get all those things together, your physiology be organized and oriented properly too. And that means your organs work properly and the micro elements of them work properly and all the way down. And then if everything is organized like that too, the society starts to work. And everything starts to organize itself along a horizontal axis where each level of the structure supports every other level. And you can feel that, I believe. That's what you feel when you're engaged in doing something meaningful. You can feel those things coming together. And you can also feel like that as a kind of strength that pushes you forward instead of pulling you backwards.
That's also, I would describe that as the flow state. So if, while you're doing something, you lose yourself in that something and you feel all your other worries wash away, and what you're concerned about in your life, it disappears, well, it means you're doing something then that's worth doing, right?
So, and I think that our nervous systems are very sophisticated, and they orient us in time and space, and they can tell us when they're in the right place at the right time, and people love that. And I think you experience that when you're deeply engaged in music as well. It puts you there momentarily, right? Say you're in a cathedral and you're listening to some remarkable music. If the light pouring in, you're in trees, because that's what a cathedral is. That's what the arches is. It's light coming through the trees. That's what's represented in the stones. You're in there, you're looking at the light. It's pouring down at you. You're at the center of the world, and there's a great piece of music playing. And it's an indication that everything is stacking up along this one pole. That's what it's supposed to produce. That produces a religious experience if it works properly. You know that. You go to rock concerts, you go listen to music. So what the hell do you think you're doing there if you're not having a quasi-religious experience? You think you'd go otherwise?
That's about right.
And just because you don't know that that's what's happening doesn't mean it isn't what's happening. People
Right.
have been gathering together in groups and transcending the limits of their pathological individuality through music and ritual since the beginning of time.
Indeed.
Why would it be any different for us? And the light's there, that's what the light show is for. It's the same thing. It's just that the religious element of it is stripped away, partly because we've criticized that to death so carelessly that we can't integrate it anymore into ceremonies like that. And I mean, fair enough. But it's not like that comes without a loss.
Indeed. That's true.
Here's something to think about with regards to roles. So my wife and I have had this discussion many times, and one of the discussions is, well, how are we to treat each other in public? And it isn't, her name is Tammy, the discussion isn't how should Jordan treat Tammy in public, or how should Tammy treat Jordan. That's not the discussion. This isn't personal. It's how should a wife treat her husband, and how should a husband treat his wife. It's impersonal. And it's partly, you don't put your partner down in public. Why? Well, it's not because you're hurting that person's feelings. That's not why. It's that you're denigrating the relationship that you are in voluntarily. You know, and some of the most painful days I've ever spent, one in particular I spent with a group of men who had been in therapy for their marriage, and who bloody well needed it, I can tell you that. And they spent their whole day complaining about their wives.
Well, here's the thing. If you're with a girl that you feel that you should complain about all the time, probably means you made a bad choice, right? Probably means you should be with a different girl. That's too much conflict. Too many things are going wrong there.
Like, it just made me sweat the whole day. I thought, I can't believe I'm here with you guys. I can't tell you why I was. It's just, you know, it was just happenstance more than anything. And I thought, how can you be so damn dumb? It's like, it's certainly possible that you married barbarian witches. Fine. But you don't have, you're so lacking in sense that you would discuss that in public, not noticing
Indeed.
that you picked them.
That's right.
So basically all you're doing is holding up a sign and waving it constantly that says, I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I'm a bad picker. I'm an idiot.
Idiot, right? And so, well, back to responsibility. You have a responsibility to those whom you love and are obligated to ensure that they manifest themselves in a manner that's most beneficial to them over the long run. Now, you have the same responsibility, I would say, to yourself, but you'll have blind spots. Other people have to help you with that. But so the rule is, you know, you help your wife figure out how not to make a fool of herself in public.
Right. Exactly. If she's criticizing you in front of other people, not only does she make you look bad, she makes herself look bad because she picked you, right? Although, technically speaking, women pick men for bedroom fun and men pick women for relationships. But anyway.
And she extends to you the same courtesy. And it's partly maintenance of the sacred nature of the relationship.
That's
It has
right.
nothing to do with you or her, precisely. It's broader and wider than that. Okay, so then that's two levels of responsibility. Child, partner, next level of responsibility. You're asked at your workplace to undergo unconscious bias retraining. And you say yes. It's like, okay, you've just admitted that you're a bigot, right?
Indeed. That's right. If you agree to, that's right. Yeah, that's accurate.
Because you're acting it out. It's like, I'm a racist bigot, obviously I need to be retrained. And so you might say, well, I'm not going to make a fuss about it, right? Or I've been told to do it. Or maybe you agree with it, fine. And if you agree with it, no problem. You can make a case for it. I think it's a weak and appalling case, personally. Indeed. But you can make a case for it. You could say, well, I am interested in my biases and how to rectify them. And like, fair enough, people are biased. But if you object to it and you don't say anything, then you're complicit.
Right.
And then it's on you. And like, A causes B and C, and B causes C and D, and so forth. The thing it doesn't always, but it has this tendency to expand. And you'll come home angry and upset, and you'll go to the training program and you'll think this is ridiculous, because that is what you'll think in all likelihood, and you won't say anything. But it eats at you. Well,
indeed,
you've abrogated your responsibility. And then you might say, well, so then that's how the community becomes corrupt. That's how the community starts to be corrupt, is that people turn a blind eye to emergent pathology when they know it's pathological. That's exactly what the Egyptian story says. Osiris is overcome by Seth because he's willfully blind. Willfully blind, which means he knows, but refuses to. He knows, quote, his predator detection systems have gone off. Monster. Well, then you're supposed to look, okay, exactly what sort of monster is this? Well, it doesn't have wings, it doesn't have a tail, You cut it down you cut it from the monster that it could be into the monster that it is. That's the first step. And then you take the appropriate steps. And then you also notice the other monsters, because here's something to think about. You're going to pay a price for speaking up, but you're going to pay a price for not speaking up. So it's like monsters on the right, monsters on the left. Pick the ones you want to battle with. If you decide not to make your stand, you weaken yourself. If you do it 100 times, then even if the monster was only this big, now you're this big. It's going to eat you.
Right, exactly. So every time that you capitulate, every time that you surrender, every time you don't speak up against what it is that you think is ridiculous, you are actually destroying yourself. You're weakening yourself.
When it was this big, you probably could have kicked it across the room. It's too late for that. You've capitulated and capitulated. And so what you've done, and this is a way to think about it from a Jungian perspective, this is what Jung was trying to get at when he was talking about alchemy. It's like the thing that pops up to object to you is this incredibly complex entity. It's the entire world encapsulated in the event. If you interact with it, you unpack it. You differentiate your sense of the world, and you gather new skills. Let's say we're having a conversation, and it's flowing melodically, and all of a sudden I say something, and there's a disjunction, right? You're offended by it. There's some negative emotion that comes up, or maybe I've said something to impress you or to be arrogant, and you respond badly. It's like you've got this melodic thing going on. It's a consensual frame, and something pokes itself up to put a disjunction in the conversation. It's like, well, that's where the information is. It's like something went wrong, something didn't work out, I'm not looking at the world properly, or I don't know you well enough, or as well as I thought. There's something there, and if I have any sense, I'm going to focus my attention on that. Like, not obsessively or anything like that, but that's where all the information is. Because as long as what we're doing is working, then we both know enough already. As soon as what we're doing together isn't working, then that's instant evidence that there's something about us that needs to be updated. And you might think, well, that's a terrible thing. And the answer is yes, of course it is. It's a terrible thing. But it's also the thing, and this is the next stage of the development of this, let's call it universal morality. It's like the universal morality might be found in the answer to the question, what should you do when you make a mistake? Now, one answer is catastrophic dissolution. That's a collapse into chaos. Well, no one is going to pick that voluntarily. Let's put it that way. It's unbelievably unpleasant, terribly anxiety-provoking, shameful, and painful all at the same time. worse, it can mean the absence of positive emotion. Because if you really collapse into chaos, not only are you overwhelmed by negative emotion, but the positive emotion system shut off, and that's what happens to someone who's extraordinarily depressed and also hyper anxious at the same time. Not only are they suffering from an excess of negative emotion, but they've got no incentive movement forward whatsoever. Okay, so that's not an optimal solution because it takes you out. The other possible, and so I would call that a nihilistic solution or a chaotic solution. It's not a solution, it's a dissolution. And you could think about it as a precursor to a potential solution, but it's very easy to get stuck there. And that's why Jonah could have stayed in the belly of the whale along with all the other people that were eaten by the whale and never got back out. And you see people like that all the time. Their error has come along, blown out their frames of reference, they've collapsed into the underworld, into the chaotic underworld, and they don't know how to get out. They have post-traumatic stress disorder, or they're depressed, or they're hyper anxious, or they're resentful and aggressive and destructive. Like, there's any number of states of being that can overwhelm you when the bottom has fallen out of your life. So it isn't something that people are going to, it's not an optimal solution, let's put it that way. Well, the other, that's a nihilistic solution, a collapse. The other solution is, we're talking and I don't get what I want from you, and so I say, you better not do that again. I don't want to see that from you again. And so that's a tyrannical attitude, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my universe of order and its predictions, and I'm going to say, you go along with this, or I'm going to punish you. And now there is an element in society, like society is made up of.
Yeah, so that dictatorial approach, okay. Here is my opinion. There are two ways to rule. There is fear and there is bribery. These are the only two ways that work. And depending on your circumstance, you're going to have to use one or the other. So, bribery is like, you're with your girlfriend. You're so good that she can't replace you. That's basically a form of bribery, right? She's getting such a good deal, she can't help but accept, right? And then there's fear, and fear is, I'm worried that I'll lose him to my other options. He doesn't like when I do this, and I'm worried that if I keep doing it, he's going to leave. You see? There is no other way. Otherwise, it's not leadership. And here's the thing. If you're not leading the relationship, someone is. And if she leads it, it's led into the ground. So, that's that. Alright. Let's end the video there. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all the notifications. Drop me a donation like Hunter M, Adrian and Tom M. Shout outs to them. Buy my books at bit.ly/heliosbooks. Shout outs to Curry Kid, last person to buy a strategist guide to seduction. I really do appreciate it. Go to my Patreon and subscribe. Patreon.com/theheliosblog. Share this video. And don't forget, if you guys are listening on the podcast, I have put a subscription feature on there. Just click the description box for the podcast itself, and it's in the text. You can see it under support the channel. Alright, thank you everybody for listening, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.